Hello, my name is Ian Moody and I'm the founder of Citizens for a Sensible Spokane, a grassroots political committee focused on the reform of local cannabis policies. Spokane's medical cannabis community sustained a series of almost fatal blows from the United States federal government earlier this spring. Beginning on April 6, 2011, U.S. Attorney Michael Ormsby notified local landlords and dispensary owners to cease and desist or face possible federal prosecution. Many of the city's 30 or so dispensaries closed their doors independently. However, a few bold and compassionate providers remained open to patients in need. On April 28th and May 18th, those still open were raided by a joint task force of local, state, and federal agencies, including the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the Spokane Police Department. Finally, on July 20th, 5 area providers were indicted on a list of federal charges and could face up to 20 years in prison. The aftermath of these events has forced Spokane's once thriving and open medical cannabis industry to move underground. Meanwhile, Senate Bill 5073, a bill revising Washington state's medical cannabis laws, was passed by the state legislature on April 22nd and included provisions for state-licensed production, processing, and dispensing of medical cannabis. However, these provisions were vetoed on April 29th when Governor Christine Gregoire signed the bill into law, under the assertion that state employees may be subject to federal prosecution for participating in such a program. The surviving portions of SB 5073 went into effect on July 22nd of this year, allowing for 10-patient, 45-plant collective gardens rather than retail-style dispensaries. They also include provisions clarifying the one-patient-at-one-time loophole, exploited by many storefronts, limiting designated providers to assisting one patient every 15 days. Although Spokane's medical cannabis industry has been severely disabled by interference from Washington, D.C. and inaction out of Olympia, local patients and providers are slowly coming together to rebuild a community and create safe and responsible access for those in need. On June 20th, 2011, the Spokane City Council voted unanimously to amend Spokane Municipal Code, Section 1015-100, to include language accounting for recent changes made to Washington's medical cannabis laws, appearing to allow for collective gardens within city limits. However, the provisions pertaining to medical cannabis are vague and do not stipulate whether collective owners are to obtain a business license, pay taxes, or are subject to other local laws such as zoning and land use codes. As a result, providers are reluctant to openly assist patients, leaving many without safe access to quality medicine. It's important to note that Section 1102 of SB 5073 provides that cities, towns, and counties may adopt and enforce zoning requirements, business licensing requirements, health and safety requirements, and business taxes. Localities such as Seattle and Ellensburg have already passed ordinances allowing for and regulating medical cannabis production within city limits. Other rural and more conservative towns and counties have opted to place bans or moratoriums on collective gardens. As the largest and most populated municipality in the region, city officials in Spokane have a responsibility to provide clarity on this matter. Citizens for a Sensible Spokane's medical cannabis product regulation ordinance provides a framework for local advocates and city officials to begin discussions. Modeled heavily after an ordinance recently passed unanimously by the Seattle City Council, this measure would allow for safe access points to begin serving patients openly without fear of reprisal under the conditions which are consistent with state law. Although medical marijuana has been dominating the headlines as of late, it's merely one aspect of a war on cannabis waged against U.S. citizens for over 70 years by the American government. Prior to 1937, when Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act, essentially outlawing marijuana in the United States, cannabis-infused products were available without a prescription at drugstores and pharmacies and were used by many to ease a variety of symptoms. Since then, cannabis has been vilified in order to support numerous ulterior political motives, none more evident than former President Richard Nixon's blatant disregard for a federally commissioned report calling to decriminalize adult marijuana possession more than 40 years ago. In 1972, the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse released a report commissioned by then-President Nixon entitled Marijuana, A Signal of Misunderstanding. The commission, headed up by Raymond P. Schaefer, concluded that possession of marijuana for personal use would no longer be an offense, but marijuana possessed in public would remain contraband and subject to summary seizure and forfeiture. Casual distribution of small amounts of marijuana for no remuneration or insignificant remuneration, not involving profit, would no longer be an offense. Rather than heeding the recommendations of the Commission, Nixon went the other direction, initiating a war on drugs, which has cost the American taxpayer over $1 trillion to date. Over the course of the last 30 years, a number of states and municipalities throughout the country have passed laws decriminalizing possession of small amounts of marijuana by adults. In 2009, the Washington State Bar Association endorsed a bill which would have made possession of 40 grams or less of marijuana by adults a Class II civil infraction rather than a criminal misdemeanor. The Washington State Department of Community, Trade, and Economic Development concluded that this approach could see a combined reduction in expenditure of upwards of $11 million per year for local governments. Although the financial costs are staggering, the social and human costs are of greater importance. More than 800,000 marijuana-related arrests were made in 2010 in the United States, 90% of which were for simple possession alone. That's actually half of all drug-related arrests in America. Misdemeanor convictions for marijuana can interfere with one's ability to obtain employment, receive financial aid for college, travel freely, and secure visitation and custody rights with children, all for simple possession of a plant that has no lethal dose. In an attempt to address these issues locally, Citizens for a Sensible Spokane has introduced a second ordinance which would make possession of 40 grams or less of marijuana by adults a Class III civil infraction, punishable by a fine of up to $50 rather than a misdemeanor and possible jail time. This ordinance will not affect authorized medical cannabis patients, however. Although these ordinances are being submitted to the Council in the form of citizens' initiatives, Sensible Spokane has no intention of sending these measures to the streets for a petition drive. Rather, we hope that city leaders will take the responsibility they were elected and appointed to perform and begin working with local cannabis advocates to address these issues. If none of the current council members are willing to champion this cause, supporters are strongly encouraged to reach out to and endorse candidates who will take a stand on the matter for the November 2011 general election. Please join Citizens for a Sensible Spokane on Monday, September 26 at the Spokane City Council Chambers located at 808 West SpokaneFalls Blvd for a hearing regarding 2 cannabis-related ordinances. The meeting begins at 6 p.m. and supporters are encouraged to sign up to speak in favor of both measures. At the end of the hearing, a representative from Sensible Spokane will request a legal review of the ordinances in order to assist in the final draft of a comprehensive measure due out at the end of the year.